Have you ever wondered how you can upsize or downsize a pattern? Today we're going to figure that out. Hi, I'm Jill and welcome to Bag Chat. Today we are talking to a really awesome designer. She has nearly 30 patterns to her name and more to come. Now, if you are in any Facebook group, I am sure you have seen some of her amazing patterns. You would have seen the Catalina, I'm sure, with its amazing quilting. The Magdalena, I've just had a circle challenge in my group, and oh my goodness, the Magdalenas that came through was so exciting. And her latest one I have cut out on my sewing table with an applique on it. It is the Coupeville. It is amazing. Welcome, Alexis Smith from Ororosa.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Jill.
She's in Canada, if you didn't know, Alexis, and I'm in New Zealand. So you can imagine our time zone difference, but it is awesome to get together. So I've got 3 questions I ask all my guests to start with. And the first one is, how did you learn to sew?
I've always dabbled in sewing. My mother was a sewist, so we had matching outfits, little dresses. I have a older sister, so we have many, many, many matching dresses. And so it was always kind of part of my life. And I was actually, once I was married, I was gifted a sewing machine that I worked with for many, many years. And once my daughter was born in 2015, I really dove into sewing at that point, more than just pillowcases and curtains and capes and things like that. It was more into clothing. I dove very, very deep into custom knit fabrics, and that was fun and expensive, and I still have many that are uncut. And now, of course, we're into custom vinyls. And so from there, really, her closet just was insane. It was too much. It was, what do I do now? Because I can't sew anymore at her size. I don't know what she's going to like later on and have preferences. So then I said, well, okay, I'll do some stuff for me. So I sewed some clothes for me. And then it was fun, but I wasn't into tailoring.
Right.
So at that point, about around spring 2018, I decided to try a bag for my husband. I made all the normal mistakes. I left off interfacings. I left off stabilizers. I said, I don't need that stuff right now. Let's just play with it. And it was just like a rucksack. And I had a bit of fun doing that. And then I started trying a few other patterns. From there, I dove very quickly into custom bags. And I sold and made custom bags for about 1.5 years. At which time I started dabbling in design on my own. And I had shown many of my designs and purses, and people would constantly ask me for my designs. And I kind of actually always swore I wouldn't get into pattern design because I had no interest in digitizing pattern pieces, running my own business. I'm a bookkeeper by trade. I had no desire to do my own books, etc. I still don't do my own books. So from there, basically COVID hit, and my 3rd child was born 1.5 weeks into our lockdown here in Canada, and we were at home, and it was kind of like, okay, well, let's maybe consider this. And so I really kind of dove into digitizing the Zenaida backpack, which had already been drafted for about 9 months prior to that. Same with the Erica. Magdalena was very quick after that. Esperanza was thrown in purely for a non-bound bag. And it just went from there really quick. And it was addicting, and pattern design was fun. I was kind of pushed by a few key people in bag making world, mainly Erica Lee Helgerson of the Lavender and Twine. She had already kind of started dabbling. Jillian McKnight-Tootin, she's an amazing bag maker out of Colorado. And Nancy Clara, who's an amazing bag maker in Nanaimo, really close to me, about an hour from me. So I was really pushed by those few people to get into it, and that was a huge blessing because the business has just been stellar from day one for us. Yeah.
Well, we're so pleased you did because we just love your unique designs. I've got your website up on my other page. And about every single bag, I can go, oh, that's different. That just, even if it's just a part of it. Yeah. Okay, well, you've answered my 3 questions.
Sorry, I jumped ahead.
You're welcome to do that.
Thank you.
And if anyone doesn't know, obviously we're not live due to time constraints. So I do provide a list of questions. So Alexis has had time to know what I'm going to fire at her, which kind of helps. So what I really enjoy about your patterns is I'm not a gatekeeper of information.
No.
I believe if we can give people all the information they need, they can use our patterns in so many more ways. I love small structured bags, and that's my little niche. So every time I look at a pattern and I saw the coupon, and I thought, oh, I'm going to cut that smaller. And I found that really exciting. So looking through your patterns, you actually put in your pattern how to change the size. And I think that is awesome because it's a question I see in groups all the time. I'm resizing it to 120. How do I do it? So I thought, let's get you on and you can share that expertise with us. To start with, what sort of software do you recommend people to use? They've ordered your pattern and downloaded it.
Always, let me be very clear up front. I'm a Windows girl. I'm not Mac. So I can't speak to Mac and Apple products. I use Adobe. So anytime you order a PDF pattern, I recommend you open it within Adobe, not within your browser. Whatever browser you're using, if it opens in a browser window, that is wrong. Close it, go find the file, and open in Adobe. That is the number one thing. So from there, then you can do what you'll need to do with resizing, but also just printing from 100%. Even if you just want to print at 100%, you have to still be using Adobe, because if you print within a browser or from your telephone or tablet, your sizing could be off. So your test square will not print correctly. And
I'm seeing that lot. I don't know whether there was a Chrome update about 4 months ago or something happened on a browser that really threw everything. And all of a sudden I got all these emails saying, I'm about 2% off. And I'm like, okay, are you downloading and saving and printing? And 9 times out of 10, all they were printing from a phone. And what do you see as the biggest reasons why people want to change the size of a pen?
we all have different preferences. So the page that we're speaking to about within my pattern, that all started with the Catalina pattern because I knew it was going to be too big for some people.
Right.
But I wanted it at the size that I made it at because that's how I designed it. That's what I wanted. But all the testers were like, they're going to want it smaller. And I fully acknowledged that. And so that's where adding that in just made sense. And then also including it on my Facebook page, it was just something that I could easily reference and tag people in, because it's not in every single pattern. It started with Catalina. So that's where that started. And the main, again, coming back to the main question, is why people want to resize. They want to go up, they want to go down. It's totally preference. So maybe they like that bag shape, but it's not the right size for them. And Erica is a perfect example of the Erica bowler bag. I had like a baby at the time when I designed that one, and I was carrying a ton of stuff, so it was kind of a pseudo diaper bag for me at the time. But I also had 2 kids, so I didn't want the diaper bag anymore. I just wanted a change of clothes and a diaper. Like, that's, when you're into your 3rd child, that's all you need at that point.
Yeah.
But I wanted that along with my normal things. And so Erica is very large, so it's very common to see it scaled down to 85%. And so it's complete preference. And that's why when you purchase a pattern, you want to be able to tailor it to your needs. But I don't include rectangle pieces.
Right.
I don't, for a few reasons. Paper savings, my time to create all those. You still have to cut a strap at some point with a rectangle. Using the right tools, a rotary cutter, a cutting mat, and the right rulers will achieve better cuts than a pattern piece will.
Definitely.
And so it's just easier to give the cut chart. And as people progress with their bag making skills, over time you can see the progression. They learn to prefer the cut chart. But you need to know how to resize that cut chart if you're going to get into rescaling. And that's where adding that extra step of detail into the patterns really was needed for me specifically, for my patterns.
I know I often recommend, people on Facebook ask for a particular pattern in a particular shape. There was one this morning and I said, oh, this is the fundamental tote, but it's at 80%. So you can't often find exactly what you're looking for, but there's something smaller or bigger.
Yes.
And one of my patterns, if it's scaled more than 15%, I'd recommend they look at their stabilizers, because tiny can cope without a lot of stabilizer. But when you make a bag bigger, the base can be a little bit. Is there anything else you think we should be aware of that type of thing?
I mean, stabilizers is definitely a huge topic in itself. And then, yes, when you're getting into sizing patterns, I know some people have scaled up the Zenaida backpack up to, I think it was 250% versus 100. It's huge. You're going to want some real sturdy stabilizer. Now, that one's designed already pretty firm, but it's a great point that you want to adjust your stabilizers depending on the size that you're going. Bigger, you're going to want more structure. Smaller, you're going to want to decrease a bit. It's hard just even learning stabilizers, though, and the differences, to then get comfortable to modify to a different, and not everyone keeps them all on hand. I fully acknowledge that. So with my patterns, when I'm trying to design them, I try and keep it just to 1 to 2 stabilizers if I can, because you don't want too many, because they're expensive, they're hard to find in some countries, etc. So stabilizers is a great point, definitely a factor. Other things, and I think that comes later on, but is the hardware. You want to factor in hardware if you're going up or down. If you're going to scale down your hardware, then you need to know what size to put at 3/4 inch hardware, for example, versus 1 inch or even 1.5 if you're using webbing or certain things like that. So understanding those things is a huge benefit when you get into scaling patterns. Basic math skills have to be there. You have to understand basic math skills before you start scaling patterns as well.
And is there a difference, do you think, with decreasing or increasing a pattern?
No big difference. Again, you just have to understand math and how you're going to change things, how they're going to be impacted by the up or down.
So with that said, how would you go about increasing a pattern? Let's just say we want to increase it by 10%.
So my first point ever, if you're going to start changing a pattern and you already have it printed at 100%, let's say, go and find those pattern pieces and write on it 100%, highlight it, so you're not now getting them confused down the line when you go to make different sizes, especially if you're making to order. You want to know that your pattern pieces are organized. I'm all about organization. So first things first, go find the original. If you print your pattern, do the same thing on your pattern, write 100%, highlight it. Then I suggest printing a test page, of course, with the actual pattern pieces at your desired scale. So if you're going to go up, you're going to want to choose poster settings from Adobe so you can print across multiple pages if you need to. And that's very important, because as soon as if you scale up to 110%, you're going to be impacted by the page size. So if it goes off the page, you might not notice that, and it's not going to be correct. So you want to choose the poster setting. At that point, I would print all the pattern pieces. I would make sure that the test square is now scaled up approximately to 110%, which you should be able to calculate based on if it's a 3-inch square or 3 centimeters, whatever your reference point is. You multiply that by 1.1 to get what your test square should now equal. And then at that point, I would also print the original pattern completely. I try not to print too often the whole pattern, but if I'm scaling, I would. I would print it just at 100% for the instructions. And you'd want to go through things like the cut chart, and you'd want to make your measurement changes there. So any measurement that needs to be changed, you're going to multiply that by your desired size. So if you're going up, if you're going up by 10%, you would go 1.1, and that would be your new amount. But often you're going to have rounding issues. So you want to round to the closest inch or the closest millimeter or half centimeter, depending on if you're in metric. And I would literally write those down on the cut chart.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, straps, connectors, handles are going to stay at your original size if you're using the original hardware, or you're going to scale down to 3/4 inch. Then you need to adjust those. So those are like the real basics for sizing. Pattern pieces, reprint your pattern, write it on each of the pieces, 80 or 110%, highlight all that, make all the notes you can for future self, right? You want to help yourself down the line. And then I would take it one step further, and I would go through all the instructions, and I would change any placement markings, because the proportions are going to look off if you use, say it says place the handles 6 inches apart. If you're scaling up 10%, you want that to scale up as well. And so you want to change those placement markings to reflect your 110%.
Yes, definitely.
So those are the real basics, but you have to understand multiplication and you have to understand rounding. Yeah. So those are the bare basics before you can really get into it. But the tips within my pattern do lay those out. They give examples of scaling up or down.
Yeah, that's great. Because the other thing too, like the pattern I'm working on at the moment, a lot of it is based from a measurement from one point.
Yes.
Because it's got lots of bits on. Anyway, so if that's scaled, all of those measurements need to be scaled exactly the same, or else your pocket's going to be off the edge of the bag.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? So that's something that a lot of people don't talk about when they're talking about resizing, especially placement for magnetic snaps. If you're putting it, they're not going to line up unless you're, if you want them in the middle.
Exactly. Yeah.
So is there anything that's a little bit more in depth that you think we need to talk about, or other tips, or it is pretty basic once you've done it a few times.
Yes.
Yeah.
I get worried when I see people say, oh, she tells you how to do it in the pattern. You can choose whatever size you want. No, you can't choose whatever size you want, width and height, because you can only go overall proportion. As soon as you start changing 2 inches in height, 1 inch in width, that is a complete change in the pattern, and that's a whole new pattern. And so I'm always very clear to say, no, you can scale by an overall percentage using my tips, but you cannot change to your desired whatever your width times height is that you would want. That's not how it works. So I always suggest, say, if you want such and such width, go with that as your basis to find out how much percentage you want to scale up or down, and then go with whatever your measurements will end up being for the height. The other thing to factor in is a lot of patterns out there have card slots. If you're going to scale up or down, your card slots should really just stay the same, because they're not going to fit snug, or they might not fit at all if you scale down. Yeah. And that also plays into the placement of the card slot lines, dimensions, etc. You want to keep those the same, because your cards literally won't fit if you don't. And you don't want to always have to then do a vertical card slot, because maybe your height doesn't allow for that. So it's these little things that you have to really analyze when you're looking at a pattern and say, does this make sense? If it doesn't, then you need to adjust.
Yeah. So is there, you've talked about the straps and things that we don't increase.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people get confused about gussets. Well, the zip doesn't change. And I have said, well, you might be a couple of mil that you have to check on your gusset. Yes. Complete it and then check it against your zipper panel against your gusset. Is that something you've struck with people as well?
This gets back to the point of, saying you're wanting to go up 2 inches on the Catalina, but only out 1 inch on the side. It's not going to work. Your gusset's not going to fit. So you have to stick with one overall percentage that you're using to scale overall. Bags are great because they're not like clothing. You can't scale overall, right? Our proportions don't change at the same rate. But bags are awesome because you can do whatever you want with them within reason. And so that's where sticking with your overall percentage makes sense. So when it comes to bound bags, I find it's one of the harder things to scale if you don't understand that. Because your fit needs to be so snug when you're getting those panels in. So when it comes to any sort of, really, even if it's a turned and birth bag, it's the gussets going to need to be scaled at the same amount overall, because those measurements are just not going to fit. So yeah, I can't think of any time really where it's going to not be an issue.
And the other thing I say is don't forget to increase the length of your zip. It's like I see posts, I didn't cut my zip longer, you know, and I'm like,
yes.
Well, because when you've done a few, you start taking these for granted.
You have to lengthen your zipper. It just like if you have a zipper panel, say with the Catalina, you need to lengthen your zipper to meet that. Hands down, that's not going to work. Same with any pocket pieces, zippered pocket, etc.
The other thing I would suggest people take into account is if there's a pocket on the front and you're reducing the bag, for example, normally a pocket on the front or the back is designed for a phone. So if you're reducing it, make sure that pocket's still going to fit a phone, else you're going to have a pocket that is pretty much useless on the front of your bag.
Yes.
When you're first starting, I suggest making the bag at 100% first. If you can, make that pattern at 100% before you start playing with it.
Yes, absolutely. And check that percentage check it for the test square as well. Like, just the test square should be the hands down first thing you check, and just print the first page of the pattern pieces before you even print everything to not waste the paper. Because, and 100% is always the recommended, because you have to get to know the pattern. And it's designed that way for a reason.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's awesome. Now, I always ask my viewers if they've got any questions to drop them in the comments, and I'll go back to my interviewees and do a wrap-up session every now and again. So I'm sure we'll get questions on that. But thanks for sharing your tips there. But what I'm really dying to talk to you about is your patterns.
Okay.
So when you're making a bag, what do you start with? Do you start with your overall look, or is it that one thing that, like the Coupeville? If you haven't seen the pattern, guys, go and see Ororosa's website and the handles on the Coupeville, or check out my interview with, have you got one close by? You have. Yeah, look at those handles.
They're fun.
So when you do a bag like that, do you start with that amazing feature and work the bag around it, or is it the complete look?
When I'm designing, I start with a very basic sketch, and usually those aspects are in the sketch. I am a terrible sketcher, so it's very rough. Like, I see Erica's sketches and they're like to scale and they're just beautiful. No, mine are rough. They're not symmetrical, nothing. But I start with that, and then I start working through the general construction in my head first. The best time, because I'm so busy and I constant interruptions, the best time that I get to design and work through construction confusion in my head is actually like if I'm treating myself to a massage at the spa or something, I will be on the table and I'll be thinking about it.
Meant to be relaxing at the spa.
I know, but that's my, I'm so blessed to be able to do something that I love. And I'm constantly saying in my head, like, oh, I just want to work. Don't get me wrong. I love my children. I love my husband. But, laundry versus sewing, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. So I just want to be sewing. I just want to be designing. And so I actually do. I'll go to the spa to work and to design in my head, because I just get so much joy out of it, out of solving that puzzle. So at that point, I'll probably do some side sketches and kind of have an idea of where it's going to go. And then I will start literally on paper and just tweak, and make however many prototypes. The Coupeville was a real progression. Excuse me. I'd actually started with a real slouchy bag, and it just I wasn't feeling it. The handles never really changed, but there wasn't enough to it. And then finally I just said, it can't be slouchy. It's not working. It needs to change. And that's when Coupeville came, and it was pretty much, I mean, I definitely had a few more prototypes at that point, but it came very quickly after that. But the prototypes prior to that was, I want to say 6 or 7 prototypes of the slouchy one, and it just wasn't coming. I still have them, and I feel like they're just useless. But I have a rule that whenever possible, I finish a prototype fully lined, etc. Because I gift out my finished bags. So I gift them to family, friends, even if they end up at a thrift store. I don't care, as long as it's used and loved at some point. So I would rather that than the vinyl just getting tossed into the landfill right now. You know,
Yeah,
I understand that
definitely.
it's vinyl. I understand that it will eventually, but it's a usable bag. So yeah, prototypes is a hard topic. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 8, 9, 10, 11. It really depends. The Beast, believe it or not, the Beast was actually only, I want to say 2 prototypes, and then the
Okay.
pocket, the shoe pocket took final finessing,
Yeah.
but the bag itself was very quick, and it was awesome. So it really depends. So at that point, I dive right into the good. After I've got it designed on paper, and drafted out, I dive right into the good materials. I used to say, "Oh, use the crappy materials for prototyping." Not anymore,
Yeah.
because poorer quality materials react different.
Mm.
Thicker materials react different. So I will often go straight to Emmeline's Mora faux leather. It is my absolute favorite, and I'll just design with that right away. And depending on the bag style, I'll either go all solid or I'll go a print and a solid. So that's, and then it's just tweaking from
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
I love hearing people's process, and I think everyone, they look at these bags and think, "Oh, how did they come up with that?" It's
Yeah.
like, so that's really nice to get to know that. So, have you got any more bags close by that you'd like to show us?
I have some that I'm working on, but no,
No,
I
no,
don't.
that's
I
we
don't
don't
have
want to
much
see.
right now.
We don't want to see those.
You don't. Yeah, I can't show you those. You might have even gotten a sneak side of it. So this is the Beast bag. That's the only one that I really have close by, other than the Coupe Ville. This one has a double zipper opening. The back trolley sleeve or slip pocket, depending on how you want it. So if you're traveling, you can slip it over your trolley bag. You're on the
Yeah.
suitcase. Front pocket, and then this is the shoe pocket, which has been very popular, and it literally goes inside. It's a secondary kind of bag within a bag. You can
That
empty
is
out
so cool.
any dirt or sand that ends up in there. And then inside it's pretty basic. Couple pockets, and the shoe pocket, sorry, it's my blue ribbon from our local county fair. Not county, our municipal fair. So this can actually tuck away and zip away, and then it's just got some pockets and some zipper pockets and some like socks and undies, that kind of thing.
But
But
it's so practical.
yeah, and it's fun. It for at least our airlines in Canada, it does fit travel needs for stow and go. And then I don't have a ton with me. Most of them are upstairs.
It's
Limited on
fine.
space.
Yeah,
So
that's
Coupeville,
gorgeous.
yeah, it's just, it's pretty basic pockets, but then this one has the foam pocket on the back, which is very wide. And some people have opted to put it on the front as well.
Yeah, I've noticed
I like
that.
to have, if I'm going to have my phone, I like to have it closer to my body. So yeah, it's an obsession, really.
Yep. Yes.
You understand.
I understand.
Designing is fun, challenging, but also addictive.
What I find is it is the challenge that actually fulfills my creative need. Not the finished product. It's the challenge of
Absolutely.
solving the problems.
The puzzle.
Yeah, it's interesting. And once I've mastered a pattern, it's not that I don't make it again, but I'm not that buzzed about making it again.
The loose merino, when I was designing that one, it was so fun to work through it in my head. And again, 3 kids. By the time I hit the pillow at the end of the night, I'm out. But this one, I was lying in bed and I'm going, okay, you sew here, and then you sew here, and then you flip. And that was literally what I said was, okay, I'm going through it all in my head. And it worked. It was a really fun pattern to design.
Yeah.
And that is where, no question, I get my therapy, I get my enjoyment. But then when it's taking too long, I also start to get frustrated.
Yeah. Yeah. So without giving too much away, you alluded to a couple of patterns. So you've got more coming out in the near future. Have you got a rough time frame?
I'm hoping the last prototype right now. This will be my 5th prototype for this one. I've just finished cutting it. I'm just getting into sewing the handles and connectors. At that point, usually what I'll do is I'll send a few photos to my tester team, and I'll say, this is coming, this is the name, this is the hardware list. And I'll give them an approximate timeline at that point, because I don't like telling them a timeline and then shifting too much if I can avoid it, which does happen. We're all human and things come up, depending on my own schedule to actually make the bag, photograph it, write the pattern, and then get it out to the tester team. And then whoever wants to sign up can sign up at that point for testing. And they usually have 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the pattern size. Like the Beast, it was so big, I gave them 3 weeks, that kind of thing. Yeah. And then at that point, once testing is done and their feedback is in, I take a couple days to tweak, and then it goes live. So at this point, I doubt July is going to happen, but maybe early August. Yeah.
Yeah. It's quite a long process. I don't know if the general sewers appreciate how long that testing process can be.
Yeah.
The prototyping can be months, because I can come back to a pattern. No, I've got to think about that. I want more, or I want, so I think about it. I shelve it for a little while. I've just started using 2 pre-testers who I'm pre-test any issues. So by the time you do that and then send it to testers as well, and then finish off putting tester pictures in you're talking about at least a month. It's not
just
like
that process. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can very easily see crossover with styles because of the length of time involved. But looking at your pattern, I think most designers have kind of a look. You can pick up something, oh, no. But is there any of your bags that's totally unique to you, that's like you wouldn't have thought you would have come up with, but it just came out?
I would say Phoebe probably stands out. It changed and evolved so many times. Pattern is not really something that, I like a bigger bag, so it just doesn't really work for me. But I will admit that Phoebe got to the point where I was like, this either has to go away completely, and I have to completely squash my time that I've put into all these prototypes, or it needs to go out how it is at this point, because it was becoming like a weird obsession, or I couldn't focus on anything else, which was weird. I had to make a decision, and so I chose to put it out how it was. But the amount of prototyping that went into that one was quite insane. And the weird thing with Phoebe was, because the way the pieces all go together, if I made one change, absolutely every other piece had to change. And the drafting alone for redrafting those pieces was pretty much my entire work day, because I don't get a ton of time. So I would spend hours redrafting and redrafting and redrafting, and then recutting and sewing it. That was a really hard one for me. Not from the design standpoint, more from a mental aspect. Just for me to I have to either commit to this and get it out and off my plate, or I need to move on completely and scrap months of work.
Right.
So that was a weird kind of challenge. Coupeville was one, like you say, putting it aside for a while. Coupeville was actually mostly designed last year, and then I finally kind of picked it back up again, and it morphed into what it is now. But that one was also a long process. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a book of sketches that I keep going back to.
Yes.
Or I'll draw a sketch at a cafe, and I'll think of something, or I'll see something and I go,
Yes.
oh, I could use that strap detailing on something. And I go back to it occasionally and think, oh, I should work on that. But it's time, isn't it? And narrowing down.
Yeah.
So my passion at the moment that I'm working on is so different for me, very, very different. Right. But I'm enjoying the process because it stretches you out of your normal comfort zone. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I used to
so
say my average time frame between launches was 6 to 8 weeks, but now it's definitely stretched out a bit because um, for me, bound bags are very easy and come very natural, and I can have them designed in about 2 prototypes. But as soon as I get into something that's a bit different, that adds time in prototypes. So it's probably realistically, I'm more probably 8 to 10 weeks between launches at this point. And that's fine. That just is what it is.
yeah,
But yes, people do not understand how much time and effort I think goes into things behind the scenes. And like we see it all the time where there's overlaps of patterns within a month or two of each other. And I've had it, and it happens. It just is what it is. And I don't think anyone sets out to be a pattern designer to rip someone else off. It's never something like that. It's that they've been inspired by the same retail bag or whatever, and they're running with it, and somebody just happens to get it out first, and that is what it is. And the
yeah,
best thing that we can do is support each other. I've had it, and if you're a designer and find yourself in that case, the best thing I find is to reach out to that other designer the day one of their launch and just say, hey, beautiful bag, just so you know, I'm working on this. I've been
yeah,
working on it since such and such date. It'll come out in the near future. It's not that I'm trying to copy you.
yeah.
And it's just an open line of communication. And I've had it. I've been on that sending end where I just say, hey, this has happened. They're so similar. And it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was a TikTok I saw last week, and it was Robbie Williams in the park, and I don't know why Robbie Williams came up, and he was wearing this amazing sling bag, and I had to rewind and screenshot, and I'm like, I want to know how that's made, but the shape of it was so unique, and I thought, so of course your mind's going, and I'm
Of
sure
course.
someone else is probably saying the same picture, and going, that flap is gorgeous. Do you know what I mean? So not that we want to copy that either, but it inspires a look.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I try and take a few different aspects from different bags that inspire me and say,
Yeah.
oh, maybe this technique over here would work. And so you're not directly copying a retail bag, but you're taking elements that maybe you're inspired by and you're saying, okay, I'm going to use this into this pattern. And you come out with a unique bag in that sense because you're
Yeah.
mashing up your own ideas and inspiration together.
That's how I've always made my clothes. When I first started making clothes, I'd buy two patterns because I like that and I like that. But now I just, it didn't take long before I'm not going to buy patterns. I just do it myself. But
Right.
yeah. So that is awesome. We look forward to your next few patterns. So how can people follow you? Like, tell us your socials. Where are you? What's the best form of communication that you prefer from people?
So the website is ororosapatterns.com. ORO. Some people write it ORA. It's my husband is Colombian, and so there's a lot of Spanish in our house, and so it literally translates to rose gold because I use so much rose gold.
Oh,
So
wow. I didn't
Oro
know that.
Rosa. Yeah, that's how it started. So that's the main website where you can subscribe for any updates and sales and launches. So if you're not on Facebook and don't want to join Facebook, etc., the website is great for subscribing. And then Facebook, there's a main group, which is Oro Rosa Patterns Show Off Group, and that's very active and a great resource for questions. So instead of emailing me, because I'll try and get back to you right away, but instead of emailing me, if you post to the group, there's a huge resource of people there that have the knowledge that you need. So that's definitely the main point. You can also message me through the page, which is Oro Rosa Pattern. You can message me that way, or you can even message me personally, Alexis Schmidt, on Facebook. Those are the main two that I get. Email is, you can reach me through the website via email, that's listed. And then I do Instagram as well, and it's just at Oro Rosa Patterns, no spacing, no periods.
And that's awesome. People need to check out your inspiration on your site. So it's been really fun to have you on today. And that was really great tips about the changing up of the patterns, because I'm sure that's something that a lot of people ask. And it was really great looking at your insight and how you work with your patterns. So thank you for being part of the show today.
Thank you for having me, Jill.
So that is Alexis Smith from Oro Rosa. Wasn't that amazing? So if that makes it a little bit easier for you to downsize or upscale a pattern, I'm really pleased you've tuned in. And wasn't it great getting to know a little bit about Alexis' process? So we've got a lot coming up on Bag Chat. So please, if you like what you've seen today, do like, comment and subscribe and hit the little notification bell so that you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Once again, thanks for watching Bag Chat. Have a great day.